and we'll have the invocation from Alderman Barnes.
Would you bow with me? Heavenly Father, again, tonight we come to you in prayer. Thank you for this city and this town and this blessed nation that we live in. And for all these blessings, we give you the thanks. We also ask that you be with the soldiers and the troops that are in foreign fields protecting our freedoms. But we ask that you be with the families, because we know that there are hardships here as well as in the other countries. And when we separate families, we know that there are difficult times. We ask that you be with those families and with the soldiers that are in those foreign countries protecting the freedoms that we so cherish here. We ask that you be with each of us tonight as we make the decisions that affect the city of Franklin, affect the citizens of Franklin. Give us spiritual wisdom and guidance. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We're at number 4, are grievances of statements from citizens who want to make a comment on issues that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone that wants to make a comment? Seeing none, we'll move on. Is there anyone here from Williamson County Government, Mayor, or any of the county commissioners? I see none. We'll continue to move. Next item is approval of minutes, April 12, 2011, work session, and April 12, 2011, Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Is there a motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposition? Passes unanimously. Next, it's my opportunity to do a recognition from the 2011 American Council of Engineering Companies, who presented to the City of Franklin Water Management Department an award for rehabilitation of Franklin's water treatment plant raw water reservoir. So we have two things. I have a beautiful plaque for that, and here is the really good one. Beautiful picture depicting before and after. So, great job.
Great job, Waterman.
Next are miscellaneous reports.
There is no Civil War Roundtable because it's Mother's Day and we want everyone to be with their mother.
Wonderful. Well, I will remind everybody that the State of the City address is tomorrow at Liberty Hall at the factory at 7 a.m. It's a free event. Breakfast is included. We'll start at 7 a.m. and we'll have, my portion will start at 7:45, and based on the practice, I think you'll be out probably, depending on the number of questions, you'll be out before 9, let's say that. How's that? So I hope you'll all come.
We have some visitors here, some scouts.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to recognize, which troop are you from?
399.
Great. Glad to have you. Good-looking bunch. Okay, consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are deemed to be non-controversial and routine in nature by the governing body. They will be approved as recommended by committee or staff by one motion of the governing body. Is there any motion to remove any of these? Yes.
I'd like 44 and 45.
44 and 45. And I think 37 needs to be deferred also because of incomplete information. Did I misunderstand?
Yes. Yes.
So 37, 44, 45.
45, 37.
Any others? Is there a motion?
So moved as recommended.
Oh, it's deferred to when?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're exactly
Yeah.
correct. What do we need as far as deferral on the number 37?
Let's go ahead and just move it to the next meeting. We're still working through all that with the developer in that case, but if we could move it to the first meeting in May.
So let the motion show that it'll be deferred to the first motion to the first meeting in May,
Which is the 10th.
the 10th of May, thank you, and that we'll be pulling 44 and 45. There was a motion, is there
Yes, so
a
moved.
second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposition? Passes unanimously. Old business, this is a public hearing, consideration of ordinance 2011-07, an ordinance to update the City of Franklin road impact fees as presented in the 2010 Duncan Associates Road Impact Fee Study dated November 2010. If you want to make a public comment, just step to the podium, Mr. Downey. Rather, this is not Mr. Downey, this is Williams.
I'm Nancy Williams. I live at 221 3rd Avenue South, but I'm speaking on behalf of the Downtown Franklin Association. I'm the director of that organization, and as I understand it, one of the effects of this ordinance would be that there would be a pretty dramatic increase in the impact fees you would have to change if you change the use of a building in downtown Franklin. For example, if you went from an office space to a restaurant, which we have seen happen a lot, fortunately, in downtown Franklin, because everybody wants more restaurants in downtown. So Red Pony used to be a law firm, and Riffs was a boat dealer, and Mellow Mushroom was a bank. And in the instance of Mellow Mushroom, under this ordinance, it would be an additional $100,000 in impact fees to make that change. I think, I hope I'm mistaken. Sweet CC's was a print shop years ago. Ben & Jerry's was a men's shop. So they're buildings that have been there, about 100 years in some cases. They've had many uses over the years. And right now, a restaurant is just a really good use for a building in downtown Franklin. It generates a lot of sales tax for the City of Franklin when they're up and running and successful, usually more than an office use would. And we love having offices in downtown Franklin, but we've encouraged them on the upper floors, and we like retail and restaurant on the ground floor on the front row seat. So we're just kind of concerned if that really is the way this is enforced, that it would really have a chilling effect on that evolution we've seen in downtown Franklin. And Main Street, it can't get any wider, and most of the roads coming into it won't either. And I know y'all do invest a lot in downtown Franklin, and we appreciate it, but we're just concerned that this particular change would not be the best thing for the future of downtown Franklin. So I appreciate your consideration of that.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tim Downey. I'm the developer of West Haven and McEwen, and I know most of you well, and I know that in the end you'll make a good decision and not hurt anybody and do what you think really needs to be done. So I'm not here to speak against or for the impact fee credits. I just wanted to make sure before you finalized them you thought and asked all the questions, because in our study of your study, it appears aggressive. The cost analysis appears aggressive to us. The fact that your facilities tax and road impact fee collectively have become so significant that I wonder if you've looked at the effect and the effect of both of those together, and how those compete with other municipalities. We presently do business in 8 states, and by this collective tax is by far, almost by a factor of 2, higher than any place we've ever done business before. And I know if you need it, you need it. And I just wonder about all the assumptions. And then one last thing I wanted to tell you, in my experience in some other municipalities, when a tax gets this high, a collective tax gets this high, it's usually put in a special fund for the areas that it's being assessed for, whether it be for parks and not into the general fund. You may already be doing that. I apologize if I'm not up to speed, but I think from my experience, if you don't do that and the tax is this high, you're subject to people coming back after the fact 5 years later and asking for an accounting of those taxes. In some cities, and I'd be glad to send you an email, I've even seen cities have to refund that tax if it wasn't spent for the proper use. So there's just a lot of things when you get into this level of tax for road impact fee and facilities combined that I hope that you've already considered. I know I'm sure you probably have, but I wanted to say, and I know you'll come to the right conclusion. And I know it doesn't matter what I think, but I will support wherever you go, and we'll pay whatever taxes we have to pay. And thank you for listening.
I see no other people coming forward for a public hearing, so I declare the public hearing closed. Is there a motion?
Move for approval with comment.
Second.
Okay, go ahead.
Couple of things. I had been asked those same questions, Ms. Williams and Mr. Downey, and I've spent a little time trying to meet with Russ and to better understand this, because I know that we need to raise our impact fees, but I don't want to put undue burdens on the businesses here in our town, whether it be downtown or Cool Springs or anywhere in our city limits. Couple of things. Somebody's going to have to pay for the roads, and when these impacts of these businesses come in, which we're really happy that they are coming in, and that they come in and even change one use to another use, we're excited about that, but either they pay for that impact, or we end up raising property taxes to pay for it, or somewhere it's got to be paid for, because if we do not do that and do not address that situation, then we get people complaining, the citizens and the businesses alike, that we have so much traffic or the roads are not being cared for, and so then we have a double-edged sword there if we don't address that issue. So somewhere, somehow, these have to be paid for. It is going to be phased in over 3 years, so it's not, the impact is not realized in 2011, 2012, 2013. I asked Russ Truill and Vernon Girth if they would provide us some numbers here, and I'd like Vernon to speak, and Russ to speak to this. Do you have copies for the board on this? And also, I'd also like you to speak to the fact of where our, Russ, where our fees are placed, the road impact fees, that when we collect those, Mr. Downey asked about where that was placed, what kind of fund it's placed. So I'd like for you to address that as well. And Vernon, I'd like for you to go over the numbers with us and share that with the audience as well, so we can have a better understanding of that.
Well, in terms of where the funds go, they are isolated in a road impact fee fund, and that fund is used to either pay for roads directly, and these are limited to arterial roads, or, for the most part, we have been using the funds from the road impact fees to pay for the debt service on roads that were built as long as 10 years ago. When Baker's Bridge and Cool Springs was extended, and the first part, the north part of Carruthers was put in, bonds were issued in order to build those roads in anticipation of growth coming along the way. And the funding that we get from the road impact fee over the last 10 years and going forward, some of that is going to retire that debt.
Thank you.
Alderman Berger had requested an example of what the impact fee would be for an existing building. Our current ordinance includes language that when an existing business changed use into a more impacting use, that the difference from the existing use to the new use would be charged. that had not been done. And that's really, that framework has been carried over to the new ordinance, and we've emphasized that we want to start collecting that fee. So what I've done is use the new Riff Burgers and Bakery, the former Bolt Locker, as an example, and that's the table that I've provided you. And what you can see is what the current difference is in the first column, and the following 3 columns show the difference in fees as they're phased in. The bottom fee is the fee that would be collected for a change of use, in this particular instance, from general retail to a restaurant.
Do you have any of these we can provide the people that asked the question as well? Because you might want to read some.
Well, let me give you an
read some of those
example.
figures?
Let me just, I do have some copies, and I'm sure.
Can you read the figures too? Because I
provided.
think it's important.
If we had been collecting as we should have currently, you would take the existing fee for the retail use, which is approximately $17,000, changing it to a restaurant, that fee would be about $31,000. So the difference is somewhere around $14,000. Effective July 1st with the changes, if we had the existing retail Bolt Locker use and changing it to the restaurant, we would take the difference from the retail use, which is approximately $22,113, to the proposed use, $40,944. So the difference due at building permitting would be $18,831 for this beginning July 1st.
So, thank you, because it is not $100,000.
No.
I just wanted to make that clear, because we had talked about that earlier in the week, and I wanted to assure the people who were concerned about that.
Other comments?
Mayor, one reason that I support a fee that is applicable to repurposing is because the repurposing to a more intensive vehicular use requires roads. There's a direct correlation between the reuse of the building and the fee and the use to which the fee is put. It is fair to say that, well, the building has been there a long time and it's seen many uses. However, we're only charging in the event that the repurpose is a more intensive use. We're not collecting a fee, a road impact fee, each and every time a building is repurposed. We're collecting a road impact fee when the vehicular impact of the repurpose increases because of the repurposing. And I think, is it true that we are collecting an impact fee only on the difference? All right, so if you take a building that by our ordinance we have said requires this much parking and generates this many vehicular trips, and increase the parking and vehicular trips, then we are charging an impact fee only upon the difference between the old purpose and impact and the new. That seems to me to be fair. Now, would it be reasonable to encourage repurposing rather than new construction by creating a discount of that fee? Well, that's not an irrational thought. That would be fine, and I suppose there's some reasonable argument to be made to encourage reuse. We do have some vacancies around town that we might like to encourage that kind of reuse, and I would entertain that. But there is a rational and direct connection between the repurposing of a building and the fee structure that we are creating. And that's one reason that I will support the fee that is associated with a repurpose to a more intensive vehicular use.
Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting the repurpose as well, because I heard it from Main Street is that they're seeing more traffic, more activity. That's good. That's good for us, but from a tax base, that's good. That's more traffic coming downtown, more use of our roads. The other area that during our discussion phase of this, for both individuals that spoke, we did look at other cities, and you may have to refresh me a little bit. We looked at other areas. During our session over at the new police headquarters, we had a lot of developers in to sit in with us and meet with us regarding some of those other sites in other cities. So I will be supporting this additional for the repurpose. Alderman Martin.
I too will be supporting it. I hate to raise taxes or money that anybody's going to have to pay. I wish we didn't have to do that. But if you have driven down Main Street on any given night, you will see that there's not a parking place. The streets are packed with people, and we're delighted to have that. But that does bring the responsibility to the city to provide the roads and the parking for people who come in. So I will be supporting it.
Alderman Scanning.
For years, we've heard that one of the top complaints about Franklin is our traffic problems. And even though many of the roads that need attention are actually state roads, the city has taken the precedent of sometimes improving those roads. It may come to that one of these days if the state is reluctant to do more improvements than what really our citizens need. So every bit of money that we can get to help alleviate this problem that's been a long term, I think it's a wise thing to do.
Alderman Berger.
Dana, I've got a question for you. Sort of, liking sort of something you said, and you said, should it be lower for reuse versus new construction? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
and if so, when and where would you put that in, and where would that be appropriate to put that in, and when?
Well, I mentioned it for general discussion by the board. I mean, I'm not averse to incentivizing reuse of existing structures. I think that's maybe part of, a good policy. It is perhaps not desirable that there be no difference for road impact fees between building a completely new structure where there was nothing and repurposing a building for another use. That's kind of a bigger picture context, but tonight I'm not going to make a motion to amend it on the fly, but I am willing to discuss that further as we move forward with this ordinance. It's just a thought. I mean, it ameliorates the harshest consequence for reuse of buildings, which there's a good reason for people to consider doing that.
Alderman Peterson.
I have spoken before in meetings about my concern of increasing the impact fees by the amount that has been recommended at this time. I think that whenever I read that this is probably a 40-plus year low in the sale of newly constructed homes. They're saying, I think, that the records go back to 1963, and nationwide, this is the lowest actual number of newly constructed homes that we have had since 1963. I do have a concern not only for the single-family homes, which was the amount that the particular area that I've quoted here, but I think this probably is not a good time to at least double the fees as we have projected here, I will not be voting in favor of this.
Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Alderman Peterson opposed. Number 11, under new business, consideration of ordinance 2011-11 to be entitled an ordinance to rezone 4.24 acres from civic and institutional to regional mixed use for the property located at 109 3rd Avenue South, establishing a public hearing date of May 24th, 2011.
So move.
Alderman Martin moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I guess the discussion is, there's been no plan included with this. I mean, the city is the property owner, so I have
Yeah.
faith that we would do the right thing. But I'm just saying, unlike whenever this was presented before, there is no plan with it.
The concept plan is scheduled to happen with the public hearing,
Okay.
which is consistent with what we normally do as well.
Well,
So
I'm-
this is just for first reading at this point. It happens with the public hearing and the second reading,
Well, I'm just saying.
which would be in May.
That is the thing, I think that is a concern, not necessarily the rezoning.
So are we doing something that we would ask other people?
No, we're doing it exactly like
Okay.
any
Well-
other rezoning at this point. First reading does not typically have the concept plan with it because it doesn't require the same number of readings for a concept plan versus the rezoning.
Alderman Skinner.
I just would like to say that city staff is greatly involved in this and has spent a lot of time with this. Now, if this is a situation where we're going to go ahead and rezone this, but then we decide financially the city can't afford to do this at this time, there's been a lot of effort expended for something that's probably not going to happen for some time. We have done planning and other things that once it sits on the shelf for a while, we come back and there seems to be, we have to rework it. So I just wonder if if it is wise to proceed with this rezoning without a clear picture that we're going to support the funding of this.
If I could,
Go ahead.
I'd like to address that. I understand the alderman's concern. What we're doing here is trying to put ourselves in a position to move forward when the board is comfortable with a plan and an execution of a redevelopment. We've already moved the ball down about 7 or 8 months in just doing this step where we are tonight. And, we felt that that's, to be ready, it makes sense to take this step to rezone and to at least move that far into the process, knowing that a full public process and public dialogue about the redevelopment project still needs to happen. And so we took the opportunity to sort of move those outside of, they don't have to move from station to station. You can start this process, and then over the next several months, we can work through all of the details of a redevelopment and get the direction the board needs to provide and engage in a process there. But this really just gets us to the point that we can move this forward and that we are prepared as opportunity presents itself to move forward with the project as the board directs. But we've already saved ourselves some time by starting this, and this just completes at least the rezoning, and then we will engage in a much more specific discussion around the project itself.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
One dissenting vote. Next is consideration professional services agreement with 6 Smith, Seckman, and Reed for the development and submission of the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit renewal for the Franklin Water Reclamation Plant in the amount of $15,000.
I recuse myself.
So moved.
Appropriate motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Vice Mayor Barnhill. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hear none, with one abstention. Next is consideration of 2011-2012 board budget goals. Is there a motion to approve?
Move for approval. Second.
Any discussion?
I was going to say, the comment was that there would be some kind of tweaking of this. I thought it was all very good. I did notice one of the things that I had was in here, but it's not just that. They reworked several of these things, I think, to make them maybe a little bit more appropriate to the time right now.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Number 14, consideration of the request for water and sanitary sewer availability for 296 Hillsborough Road. Mr. Parker. Or is there a motion to approve?
I'll move approval with comment.
Second.
Mr. Parker.
This is something that came before the CIC committee at the last meeting. They're coming out of the committee as a 2-to-1 vote. However, there was not a discussion at the committee concerning the way the recommendation is now to proceed with the availability. It was discussion concerning how we would do it to make sure that there's only one single-family residence built on the property. Since the committee meeting, there's been discussion as far as requiring a deed restriction that is signed by both the property owner and the city that so states that only one single-family residence can be built. And so I needed to explain that and answer any questions then.
We'd ask that your motion incorporate the deed restriction.
That was going to be my comment.
Not so much that only one property can be built, but if any subsequent properties are being requested to be added on, they have to come before the board and ask for permission to be added on. I mean, we're not going to restrict them from building. We're just going to say they have to ask for permission to add on.
So why would we ever say no then?
Well, it'll be up to the board to decide what to do with it.
Does your motion now reflect Mr. Parker's comment?
I would, okay, the motion that I made was what's on the agenda, which is to approve the request for wastewater, for water and sanitary sewer availability for 296 Hillsborough Road. But my comment is to amend the motion to require, as a condition of this approval, that there be a deed restriction put in place, modifiable only by the city and the property owner together, acting together, to restrict to one single-family residence any improvements upon the property. Now that could later be, that's my motion to amend. My intent on that is that a later board and this or another subsequent owner might come forward and say, we'd like to build a guest house or we'd like to build another home, okay? But I'm not going to shy away from this simple fact. I want the city to control the end result here on this property. And in my view, a single-family home there is an appropriate use of that property. If I were being asked, I might even think that more than one single-family home was appropriate for that particular piece of property. I don't know exactly what the number is, but there's 20 acres. It's a gateway to the community. It's a gateway to the community that is directly across the street from a very established planned unit development with a specific set of criteria for density and design and so forth. And I don't mind enabling the owner of this property to develop it and benefit from being the owner and live on it. He came to the committee and he indicated that his intent was to build a home for his family. That's fine with me, and I think the community as a whole would support that. Where I think the community would part ways with this owner is if he were to come forward and propose X number of units of townhomes or a higher density development, whatever that might be. So my motion to amend is a deed restriction modifiable only in the future by joint consent of the city and the property owner to, at this time, limit the development and condition the access to water and wastewater to one single-family home.
Second.
Okay, comment on the motion, on the amended motion. On the
Well, I
amendment.
just want to comment on the whole thing. I will not support this. I will not support the request or the recommendation because, first of all, it will never be annexed into the city because it is not in the UGB. And there's no guarantee that at a later time, whoever the owner is will come before this board and beg and whine until they get what they want. And when we're not here and don't know the history of it, it's easy to say, well, they've already got one connection. Why don't we just give them more? Then we're going to be sitting here with 20 acres on sewer with no jurisdiction over the whole property. I do not think it's a good idea to go outside of the UGB to grant sewer, and I think we will be asking for big-time trouble if we give them this sewer tap or whatever connection. And I will not support it.
We're ready to vote on the amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 2 opposed, 3 opposed, I'm sorry, so we got a 4-3.
No, 3-3, and you.
Oh, no.
And that's?
No. So how many in favor?
All in favor say aye.
4.
Aye.
4 and 3.
If you
Raise your hand.
All in favor?
Okay.
I counted 4.
4 and 3, okay.
Motion, the amendment passes. to-
Can I just want to make sure the property owner does agree, right? The
Well, we'll
property-
find out.
the
We'll need to
property-
work that through.
I
The
thought
property
you-
owner has not been, as far as a deed restriction, to my knowledge, the property owner.
We've got to work that out.
Has not been worked with on doing that. He has not, doesn't know about it, the deed restriction itself. At the committee level, it was said that it was going to be restricted by the approval, by the approval of the availability to one single-family residence, but it was not stated that it
mechanism.
would be done by a deed restriction. He would have to sign the deed restriction.
Oh, okay, but at the committee meeting, I thought that they were generally agreeable, but it wasn't with deed restrictions.
My
That's
impression
the
was
difference.
that.
We weren't that specific.
Well, I don't know that the gentleman expressed his agreement or consent. I'm certain that he understood. And if he refuses to sign the deed, then he won't get the water and wastewater. So, that'll be his choice. He was clear that he wanted permission to build a single-family home.
Well, let me clarify one issue concerning that. He has water. The property was granted certain amount of water when we put a water line across the
That's
property.
right.
So
Water.
He has
Exactly.
water, so,
Well, we'd give him water anyway.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
we're
he
selling water
has
anyway.
that, he has that already.
Go ahead.
So the amendment that Dana made, Shauna, and Margaret's concern about the city not having in control, that's
you
why
will
we have
have-
this amendment, right?
You will have control, but I think Alderman Martin's concern was people in the future, the boards in the future may not recognize or understand the history. And so, by saying no, you're saying they have to come back and ask next time. By saying yes and limiting it, you like what Alderman Martin says, you never know what your future boards will do. But that's really the case with any motion you make.
But you've provided a mechanism that it will always come back to the board. It will have a
Right.
full review of the board
That's
before
what I'm
anything
concerned
would
about.
change.
Yeah.
So, it at least creates an avenue to have this kind of discussion if there's ever a request to change this arrangement.
Well, and it comes back to the board. And with this amendment, it has to come back to the board, but they, whichever board it is, they will see that it is not in the UGB, and they will have to make, at that time, an appropriate decision for that property. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, there's nothing to keep the applicant from coming back in November after the October election, and it could be 4 new aldermen sitting on there. So the concerns that we put on a restriction, deed restriction, they've got to come back, and we don't control what a future board does a year from now or 2 years from now on water and sewer availability. I think we've done an adequate job in restricting what we want out there, and you know, they've been forthright in what they've asked for, and I'll support the amended motion as well as the amendment which is already passed. But again, like I said, we don't. I mean, he could come back in November or December of this year and ask for the same thing again. So I don't have a problem with this.
Alderman Skinner.
I just want to remind us that this is not just about sewer. This is in our urban, it's not in our urban growth boundary. We never will annex this. City ordinances won't apply, city planning, all those things will be right in the middle of where we expect other people to adhere to. And yet by approving this, we're going to give them whatever they need to do just through the county. And
Mayor, I understand what the alderman to my right are saying, but here's the problem. Okay, let me give you a glimpse into the future. We're going to be asked to take wastewater from areas that are outside the UGB that we will likely not annex and that we did not participate in the planning of. That's going to happen, and that's going to happen soon, okay? And drawing some line like Hadrian's Wall and saying beyond there is nothing is not going to work. That's not a realistic solution, okay? So if you play out the idea that we just say no and then nothing happens, that's not true. If we say no, then this owner or another owner figures out what he can do, and what he can do is go up there and get permission to build however many lots he can perk on 20 acres and put in septic tanks, and then sit and wait. And guess what's downhill from there? The City of Franklin's wastewater treatment plant, okay? And it is the only place that will ever be able to serve in a sewer fashion that property and others north of there. The UGB could be changed, and I understand what the UGB means, and it is an important thing to note whether a property is within or without the UGB. But saying that it's outside the UGB today, and presuming that our decision to refuse wastewater access somehow better controls the result here, I think is a fallacy. That owner has a 20-acre property that he's entitled to develop under county regulations today. Granting him, I submit, a deed-restricted conditional access to wastewater that is conditioned upon one single-family home is far greater control than we have if we say no. Because if we say no, we'll find out what the next best plan for that property is. And it might be 8 units on septic tanks up there. I don't know. I've not done the soil studies or seen the engineering. It might be none. But it could be more than one. And if it's more than one and it's on a septic tank, make no mistake, all you've done is kick down the road the eventual connection to for that property and others that you will hear from soon. That's going to happen. And pretending that the UGB is some kind of protection from that is not helpful.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to make a comment. I will be supporting the original amendment because of the control. And as I reflect, we cannot predict what the next board will decide. And as we are here today, we are making decisions based on what we know in October, November, as Alderman Barnhill mentioned, it could be a whole different story of expectation from elected officials. But because of the control that the amendment just approved, we'll bring it back to this board, and therefore that will be some control. Also, the fact that the property owner may or may not agree to this.
Yep, it's true.
We don't know. We're fighting and supporting something that we don't even know that he may not even wish to sign off on, but I'll be willing to give him the benefit of the doubt.
All in favor of the amended motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You have that? Passes 5-2. Next is 15, consideration of utility relocation contract with the Tennessee Department of Transportation for the Franklin water main relocations for the McHatcher Parkway Extension Northwest Quadrant Project. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Number 16, consideration of the utility relocation contract with the Tennessee Department of Transportation for the Franklin Sanitary Sewer Main relocations for the McHatcher Parkway Extension Northwest Quadrant Project.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Number 44, consideration of the addendum to the professional services agreement, City of Franklin contract number 2011-0059 with Sullivan Engineering, Inc. for design services for the Hillsborough Road Improvements Project in an amount not to exceed $168,835. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. I have a comment about this, and I don't know, I was looking at the item, and I'm not sure we have exactly the same thing, but do you have on yours page 5 out of 14, or what, am I just looking at something that did not come back to this?
Here's mine.
This is on 44. This is on 44. Because, wait, 44 is, okay, you do have that?
I'm sending you mine.
Okay.
Because I don't know what you're referring to.
Yeah. Okay, if you look on that, on that page 5 of 4, it says page 5 of 14, there is a comment there that says, in Part B, construction in this area is scheduled to begin, you know, it talks about that, but then it says, the original design was to completely replace the existing culvert under Fifth Avenue at Sonic. Since that time, TDOT has inspected the existing culvert and states that it is good shape. The reason that I'm bringing this up is because basically that is where the Third Avenue extension is supposed to come across there. And we're talking about building the bridge, that's the design element, right in exactly the same area. And I want to, is that not correct?
The culvert that is mentioned here is the culvert under Hillsborough Road, right next to the culvert that will be built for Third Avenue. This particular culvert under Hillsborough Road does have to be extended. What the decision was by TDOT is we did not have to replace the whole culvert. Originally, we were looking at a complete replacement. Also, originally, we were looking at making it a pedestrian tunnel stormwater culvert, but that wasn't going to work out. So, but anyway, there will be improvements to the culvert. It will be extended. It will be worked as far as making it aesthetic as the Third Avenue type culvert is going to be. There is going to be extension to the culvert. It's just not replacing the whole thing.
I mean, I don't disagree with what is on here. What I'm saying is, I want to look at this whenever we talk again about Third Avenue, because that is a big structure that's already there, and I will be asking about how the Third Avenue extension is going to play into this. because it looks, and I drove out there after looking at the plans, I guess day before yesterday, and it looks to me as if this is going to be right where that big span that we are planning to build in Third Avenue is.
They are separated.
By how many feet?
There is a change in the stream itself between the two culverts that will be built, the one for Third and this extension. I don't remember exactly how many feet. It's not a whole lot of distance, but there is a separation of the two.
Well, you know, it talks about the.
Is there a motion? Are you trying to make a motion or amend the motion? Help me where
I'm
you're
just
going.
trying to bring this to the board's attention because it does state the Fifth Avenue at the Sonic. Is that not where we're talking about building the Third Avenue extension?
Yes.
Okay. That as I say, that's the reason that I asked for it to be pulled, because I wanted to talk about this. I do applaud the setup of this because I think that it went through many different aspects, and I know this is needed here, but I'm still saying that there are some parts of it that we will need to be talking about whenever we're looking at the projects that were already discussed today.
Understood.
So,
Is she trying to withdraw or?
No.
So,
I just wanted
She
to-
just wanted to make a comment.
Oh,
That's
okay,
right,
that's
and I
fine.
took it off the
I have no
consent
comment
agenda
then.
for that reason.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Number 45, consideration professional services agreement of City of Franklin contract number 2011-0060 with EG&G for design services for the Hillsborough Road Improvements Project in an amount not to exceed $179,530. Is there a motion?
So move.
second.
And my comment about this is, and I really have a question, is this based on, are these improvements here, are these changes based on the existing projects as they are planned right now? I mean, this is presuming that everything will go on without taking any of the, let's see, how do you want to say it? You know, what we were talking about, bidding alternatives, which we said we cannot do.
This is set up to get the plans to a biddable state. We have, most of it's for electrical, actually at the Hills, or at McHatcher area. But it's set up to where we have there's funds set up in here where we can do some minor alterations to the plans based on discussions we've had, issues that we may undertake.
It's consistent with the board direction that we received on
Right.
Hillsborough to date in terms of design and the project itself.
So in other words.
But like David said, largely driven by some electrical work that needs to be done as well.
But my question is, whenever we were, prior to the last meeting, I had staff discuss with me some alternates that we thought we would be able to bid as to whether we wanted to include them or not.
This is for Hillsborough Road, right?
But I mean,
Okay.
are you talking about Hillsborough from Del Rio North? Or are you talking?
This is all.
The all of it?
All of Hillsborough.
So so in other words, this would be the project as shown tonight with no alternates probably in the
Well,
bids.
there's some areas where we're looking at doing alternates. Right now, those that have been discussed, we're not sure we're going to be able to do. As you mentioned,
That's right.
TDOT has not allowed us to, but it will not change what they are going to be doing as
Okay.
far as design efforts.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
I might add that there is actually an error in the caption. It is 100 and not to exceed $189,530.
7 should be an 8.
Yes. Sorry about that.
That's significant.
You made the
$189,530.
motion, didn't you, Dan?
Yes.
And Is that number okay with you?
That number is perfect.
And you made the second, didn't you, Beth? So you're good with that?
Good.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, see none. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.